presentation, A Guide to Managing Shelter Cats. So how to recognize, understand, and handle fearful felines. Just a sec. All right. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida. I got my bachelor's degree in animal biology from USF in 2018, and I hope to graduate this semester with my master's in animal shelter medicine. I've been a vet tech for the last 7 years, and I'm currently applying to vet schools. And last semester through this program, I did become fear-free certified in the shelter training in fear-free shelter medicine. And also, in case anyone thinks I'm biased just towards cats, here are my 6 rescue dogs that I currently have. But these are also on the screen, my 5 cats. And cats and cat behavior are a big passion of mine. I've actually owned over 25 cats in my lifetime. When I was little, we had 13 cats at one point, and I've helped with numerous TNR programs and bottle raised mini litters of kittens and things like that. So I consider myself very knowledgeable on cat behavior. So why management matters? Well, we all know that the shelter environment is an extremely stressful place for all pets, and chronic stress can lead to a decreased immune system, which can have detrimental effects on both their health physically and mentally. Adult cats are the most underserved population in shelters, and they account for the largest portion of shelter euthanasias across the country. Since volunteering at the shelter, I've noticed some drastic disparities between shelter dogs versus shelter cats, and this is everything from their housing to their enrichment to their marketing. And a lot of this has to do with a lack of understanding about cat behavior and misconceptions about cats in general. And there's always been this bias that people have against cats for whatever reason. Not everyone, but I'm sure many of you have recognized that there's a different attitude towards cats versus dogs in a variety of fields in a variety of ways. Working as a vet tech for many years, it was pretty prevalent when the spicy kitty comes in and everyone runs, and usually everyone runs to me and says, Berlin, you got to get this room. Whereas the 90-pound aggressive dog comes in and no one really bats an eye. And this happens in shelter medicine too. And the analogy I love to give is a dog comes in who's brought in by the owner and is now hunkered in the corner of their kennel, trembling, and everyone's first thought is, oh my God, this poor dog, we need to get her out right away, give her lots of love and attention, and maybe get her to her foster or something. And that's appropriate, but on the flip side, when a cat comes in like that, who is hiding in the back of their kennel, probably hissing, maybe growling, most people's first thoughts is, yikes, better not touch this cat. Obviously, it wants to be left alone. When in reality, these cats are feeling the exact same way as the dog in this analogy. They just display that fearfulness in a different way and often aggressive way. And it's typically these cats who need the most attention. And it's this kind of thinking that I'm trying to change here. There needs to be more of a cultural shift to where cats get the same amount of care and time and enrichment and respect as dogs do. But in order to do that, more people just need to understand them better and understand their behavior. And because of this lack of understanding on cat behavior, I saw that most cats at the shelter usually got placed into one of 2 categories. They were either considered friendly or they were considered feral and unsocialized. When really, feline temperament, just like dogs, lies on a very broad spectrum. Most of the time, these cats are just honestly scared out of their minds, and what people don't realize is that aggression does not always mean feral and unsocialized. It most always means that this cat is experiencing a mix of fear, anxiety, and stress, or FAS for short. And so a lot of people don't see that cat behavior is very different than dog behavior. And because of this, I saw this huge problem that was happening within the shelter with a lot of these cats. They were being admitted to the shelter because they were so scared. And because of that, they were hiding and hissing. And because of this, nobody wanted to touch them. And I mean, literally nobody touched these shelter cats during their entire stay, whether they were there for 2 weeks or 3 months. So these cats who were once wonderful house pets were having their emotional needs just completely neglected and ultimately became what I like to call desocialized. And what that's defined as is they were being totally deprived of sociality. And that's exactly what was happening, all because of a lack of understanding of cat behavior and a hesitance to handle potentially aggressive cats. So, how do we combat this? Well, from the time that these cats are admitted to the shelter, we need to socialize them and provide them with out of kennel enrichment and incorporate human interaction as a part of their daily routine, just like we do with the dogs at the shelter. And in doing so, we will decrease their stress levels, improve their quality of life, and hopefully get them adopted quicker. So my goal for this project was to do just that. And in doing so, I was able to create some really great training videos to demonstrate exactly how to handle aggressive cats, how to assess them inside their kennels. And these cats in these demonstration videos can teach animal welfare staff and volunteers to do just that. And I included this photo on the screen here as a good example of why I thought it was so important. This is actually a screenshot from my own Instagram where I follow this cat page, and all they post is about cats. And they obviously thought that this cat was having a great time on the way home from the shelter. But if you know anything about cat behavior, this cat is actually exhibiting some classic signs of fear and anxiety because he's open mouth breathing, his pupils are very dilated, his ears are back, and he's climbing up this person's shoulder. So for this project, I worked extensively with the cats at Pasco County Animal Services, which is a municipal shelter. And what I did is I would go to the shelter and assess the cats who needed the most attention. So those that were labeled aggressive, staff only, and those that were labeled caution, or those being treated for severe kennel anxiety. And because of these behaviors, these cats were kept in a separate kennel room, so not on the adoption floor. And I would carefully take them out of their kennels and transfer them into a cat showroom or an enrichment room. And I would use what's called gentling techniques. So essentially, I spoke to them softly and I gently pet them as much as they were comfortable with. And I socialized with them anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes a day. I did this about 4 times a week for almost 4 months. And in order to keep track of their progress, I used the chart here that you see on your screen, the spectrum of fear, anxiety, and stress, or FAS for short. And I scored them on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being the most relaxed and 5 being the most severe and aggressive. And I would rate them before, during, and after our socialization sessions. And I really think that most shelters and vet clinics should have a chart just like this because it is an awesome tool for recognizing cat behavior and body language, as it gives you a really good breakdown of each stage. Very, very well and very good tool to use. So here is a video of me. Hold on, these videos are a little touchy, but this is me working with a cat who is exhibiting some moderate signs of FAS, so about 2 to 3. So you can see her, she's here in the top left corner of this kennel. She's laying flat, her body's pretty tense, her tail's tucked, her pupils are a little dilated, but she's not showing any signs of aggression, so no hissing or growling, just very fearful and hesitant to come out and greet me and things like that. So what I did was just gently pick her up with the towel, got her wrapped up and placed her in the box to transport her to the enrichment room. And once in the enrichment room, hopefully this will load. Maybe. Well, once in the enrichment room, I would just let her out of the box. Again, she wasn't displaying any signs of aggression, so I was comfortable letting her out of the box on her own and letting her explore her environment just a little bit before I worked with her. But this is the enrichment room that I used for all the cats. I tried to reach for her a couple times, but she was a little too nervous. So I just gently corner her and pick her up with my towel. And then I go ahead and wrap her in a little kitty burrito so that I'm safe and that she's secure. And I just socialize with her, like I said, and I did this for anywhere from half hour to an hour and a half. On the flip side, here is a video of me working with a cat who was displaying 5 out of 5 on the FAS score, so some severe signs of fear, anxiety, and stress. Give it just a second. But this cat was extremely aggressive inside of her kennel. I could not grab her by hand, or at least I didn't want to grab her by hand, so I just used this tool to push her off this ledge here and get her into the other side where her cat den was. A lot of these cats had feral cat dens in their boxes, which are a really great tool for containing and transporting cats like this. So this cat, again, was very aggressive. She would hiss and spit at me every time I approached her kennel door. Um, pupils were very dilated and just a very tense and aggressive cat. As you can see, that's what this red label here on her kennel cage card is saying, that she's aggressive, staff only, and this green kennel card is saying that she was being treated with gabapentin for kennel stress. Again, I'm just slowly opening her kennel as she's lunging at me, and once she's in the box, I go ahead and use my towel to keep her in there while I pull out the cat den so I can get it in position so I can put the cover on. And these dens also have a nice lock, so you can lock the cover in place and transport them. And right after this, I transported her to the enrichment room. And now I'm going to go ahead and show you some case studies to just demonstrate the dramatic effects that this kind of socialization and enrichment can have on these cats. So first up is Ink. Ink is the black cat that I was just previously working with, who is very aggressive inside her kennel. Ink was an owner-surrendered cat who was brought in to the shelter by her owner on August 10th. She was about 5-year-old spayed female, and I started working with her September 26th and initially scored her inside her kennel a 5 out of 5 on the FAS score chart. And when I initially asked about working with Ink, many of the staff members told me I wouldn't even touch her. She's evil. And here is a clip of me and Ink during only our second session. The first session that I worked with her, I didn't even open her cat den because I was still assessing her and I wasn't sure how she would react to me. But by this time, she was giving me some subtle signs in her cat box that she might be okay with me touching her. So I opened it up and she positioned herself, as you see here. There were a few distractions going on outside, so I just waited until those went away, but then I go ahead and reach for her. And this is my first time touching her. And you can see she leans into my hand, and I honestly almost cried at this point because you could just tell it was like a weight was lifted off her shoulders, like, oh, thank God someone's petting me for the first time in over a month after being just so isolated and scared. And here you could see Ink clearly enjoying our out of kennel enrichment time. This video on the left here is actually her only about 25 minutes after the first time I petted her. And let's see if that'll load. The more I talked to her, the more I gently pet her, she really opened up and became this amazing cat. And by October 7th, she was scoring a 0 out of 5 outside of her kennel, and we did photo shoots, she ate treats and things like that. Unfortunately, she was still very aggressive and scared inside her kennel, but with these kind of cats, it's super important to market them appropriately and promote one-on-one meet and greets so that potential adopters can see what kind of cat they truly are. And unfortunately, with Ink, she did ultimately get sent out to a cat sanctuary where she's still struggling to thrive. Next up is Azure. He was a 9-year-old neutered male who was confiscated from his owner and brought to the shelter on September 5th. I didn't start working with him until October 5th, so a month later, and as you can see, he was labeled a caution, displaying aggressive behaviors and being treated for kennel stress. Initially, I scored him a 5 out of 5 inside his kennel because when I would open the door, he would lunge at me and hiss at me, and he was a big cat, so it was kind of intimidating at first. And here is the video of me opening up his kennel box for the first time during our very first session. As soon as I brought him into the enrichment room, he was very curious, and as you could see, he was friendly from the start after just being removed from that kennel environment. And here is Azure. On the left, this picture shows him immediately following our first session. I put him back in the kennel with his box, and he came right out and started eating his food. And I distinctly remember a staff member walking by when this happened, and they were like, "Oh, wow, is that Azure? I've never seen him come out of his kennel." So clearly, this had immediate and positive effects on this cat. And by October 10th, so just 5 days after I started working with him, he was scoring a 0 out of 5 fear, anxiety, and stress, both inside and outside his kennel. And here is him during our Christmas photo shoot. I mean, he even let me put little bow ties on him. And then here's us taking a selfie because he became my bestie. And so this cat was here at the shelter for a full month, showed 0 signs of behavioral improvement using the leave me alone technique that many shelters tend to do. But after just 1 session of positive human interaction, he significantly improved. Azure was actually labeled to be sent out as a barn cat because of his aggressive behaviors at the beginning. And despite my best attempts at getting him moved onto the adoption floor, he was ultimately sent out to live in a barn. And I have no issues with barn cat programs, but it doesn't mean just because a cat's aggressive doesn't mean that they need to be a barn cat, especially if they've never lived outside before. And lastly is Lovey. This cat was about 8 to 10-year-old neutered male. Owner surrendered. I actually think his owner passed away, unfortunately. He was brought to the shelter September 23rd and was placed on quarantine for quite a while. As you can see, this was the first picture I took of him. He's pretty unhappy and stressed in this kennel. Initially, after like a month or like 6 weeks of being on quarantine, I finally asked, like, "Hey, why is he still on quarantine?" And come to find out, oh, they just didn't change his kennel card. So unfortunately, it took me longer to get to work with him, but I'm very glad I did. And again, because of his behavior, he was labeled to be sent out as barn cat. I didn't start working with Lovey until November 1st and initially scored him a 3 out of 5 on the FAS score chart. And then just 3 days after working with him, he was scoring a 0 out of 5, both inside and outside of his kennel. And as you can see here, he is way more relaxed inside his kennel. And by November 17th, I was able to convince management that he should be moved onto the adoption floor. And they did. And I love this picture. He's standing so proudly next to his ready to go home sign. And then not even 3 days later, Lovey did get adopted by a private owner. And I was able to get in contact with them, and they sent me these amazing photos of him exploring his new home and just getting all the love and attention that he really deserved. So once again, this was a cat who literally went untouched by humans since entering the shelter for over a month. And I believe he suffered mentally and emotionally because of it. But with just 3 days of me socializing with him, his behavior greatly improved, and he ultimately got adopted because of it. And I truly think that he probably would have been sent out to a barn program if I hadn't worked with him. So in conclusion, the reality is the majority of shelter cats, especially those that are owner surrendered, need positive human interactions to have their emotional needs met. And in fact, a lot of them desperately crave this human attention. Gentling and socialization work with these cats. Each cat that I worked with, which was about 15, different cats improved their FAS score by at least 2 points, and the time that it took to lower each score progressively got shorter with each session. And I also want to mention that some of the most severe behavior was produced by owner-surrendered cats, and this is likely due to their extreme frustration of being moved from a home environment and into the shelter with no further human interaction or socialization. And actually, not a single owner-surrendered cat acted aggressive towards me once they were out in the showroom with me. So a little TLC goes a long way with these cats, and I really want to drive home that fearful does not mean leave me alone. A lot of times, a fearful cat is actually begging for help and begging for human attention. And another point I just really want to drive home here was this quote from an article called Updating Animal Welfare Thinking by David Meller. And he says, for animals to have lives worth living, it's necessary to minimize their negative experiences and provide them with opportunities to have positive experiences. So even though many of the cats I worked with were still very stressed inside their kennels, I was still able to at least provide them with some positive experiences and improve their welfare during their shelter stay. Lastly, I do want to just showcase some marketing techniques that I learned from this program. I was able to create some wonderful coasters and some cute bottle tags for the shelter and the pets there. And we were able to distribute those to some local breweries, which I thought was really cool. And thank you all for coming to my capstone project. I really encourage you guys to visit my ePortfolio. Hopefully we found the link for that because on there I have some more case studies with honestly some really heartwarming videos and some dramatic transformations of cats. I also have on there some great training videos that demonstrate exactly how I handled these cats and how I was able to assess them and what body languages told me what. And I also have some more marketing ideas as well as other resources on there. And the next time that you see a cat hiding in the back of its kennel, I want you to put yourself in their paws and think of how you can improve this shelter cat stay. Thank you all for watching.
Berlin, that was amazing. You're getting